Welcome to Guerrilla Sports Off-Field, presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. Go to trustedamerican.com to see how much they can save you today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Off-Field. I'm Liv Moods. This is BK. Brandon Krisztal. And we are here to
write it down. I get nervous reading.
Yeah. He just wrote it down for me just in case I forget. But we are here with another episode of Off Field. Obviously, our Denver Broncos on a bye week this week, which has been kind of refreshing and nice. But mostly because it's felt like a lot of ebbs and flows this season. Emotional roller coaster. It's been nice to kind of be able to watch or think about the NFL and not have to worry about the Broncos playing. But there are still a lot of NFL games that we can dive into. BK, before we get into the NFL, do you personally want to touch a little bit on the college football playoffs and the bowl games and the buffs? I talked about it a little bit this morning on the Daily, but anything that jumps out to you and things you're looking out for?
Well, we've got some really fun college football matchups when you look at the slate of, there's only obviously a handful of games in these conference championships that really matter. You also have the FBS, which we used to all call Division II. Those playoffs are underway, and so that's fun as well. But the Big 12 title game, we had hoped to potentially be there with the Buffs. Houston and Arizona didn't, or Houston rather, and BYU. Houston didn't hold up their end of the bargain, despite driving for what would have been the go-ahead score. Quarterback just loses the ball and all was lost. Iowa State, Arizona State, as massive as Jerry World is, and even though every Iowa State fan in the world probably never thought their team would be in conference title game, they all get on I-35 and drive from Ames down to Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Ames is 4 hours north of Kansas City. You're talking about the fastest you can get there is 11 hours if you're burning down I-35. I think between that and Arizona State fans, yeah, they could hook across I-10 if they're going to drive over. Obviously, everyone can fly. I'm not minimizing air travel. I'm simply saying because, I think the Buffs and the prime Shador Travis Hunter factor would have got you a bigger crowd if you're Horned Frogs, even if my Jayhawks are K-State, which are 3 or 4 hours closer than Iowa State. Mm-hmm. If they're there, Baylor, go to Houston if they would have somehow gotten there. BYU's not going to bring as many fans, even though they have a big fan base and plenty of Mormons everywhere that would have descended on. So I think we might see 20,000 empty seats. So that's kind of a bummer because I like you, I'm a Big 12 homer, and I have been. The Big 12 conference started my freshman year. And when CU left, I was bummed because then my Jayhawks weren't coming here. Longhorns weren't coming here. My whole family went to Texas. Obviously, I kind of hate that Texas isn't in the Big 12 anymore. But that to me is almost the least exciting of all the matchups this weekend. Clemson and SMU is interesting because if Clemson wins, they automatically get in to the playoff, and that shakes things up because they're ranked 17th. The game of the day, though, without question, and we're going to talk about tonight's because it relates to the Heisman, but the game of the day happens at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Number 5, Georgia, number 2, Texas, a rematch from a game earlier this year. Texas is the home team as the higher seed. The game's in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, where, by the way, I saw this earlier. They have this food available tomorrow.
This food available tomorrow.
A rack of ribs filled with mac and cheese, Ritz cracker crumbs, scallions, and kettle chips are available at Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
A heart attack.
For $30.
$30 for a heart attack.
I don't know if we can zoom in on this picture or not. If I just hold it up, can you see? We probably can't zoom in, but you get the idea. You see it flaming.
It's flaming and there's smoke.
The ribs have the mac and cheese inside. The ribs are the bowl.
The ribs are the bowl.
Yeah. So that be pretty wild tomorrow.
Talk about a stomach ache. No, thank you.
And then the Big 10 title game, Penn State at 11-1. I don't think Penn State's anywhere near as good as Ohio State, but Penn State can kind of upset the apple cart because if you win those conference championships, the Big 12 wasn't a part of it, I guess, but 4 conference champions get the bye. And so if Penn State were to beat Oregon, that would kind of throw some things into flux because then Oregon is hosting a playoff game. I think we're going to like seeing that these teams are going to host playoff games on campus in that first round for teams 5 through 12. But the game tonight is really fascinating because UNLV could also upset some stuff too, because there's no way Boise can stay in if they lose tonight. And so thus UNLV gets in. And Boise's favored, I think, by 4.5. You're going to see Ashton Genty.
Who's neck and neck with Travis Hunter. I talked about that this morning.
These yards count for his Heisman total and annual, or yardage, single season yardage. But I didn't realize, even as good as his year is, how far behind he is. Guys like Melvin Gordon, I don't think, maybe he was a Heisman finalist. Melvin Gordon ran for 2,500 yards his last year at Wisconsin.
Melvin Gordon is like, he's not on a team.
Well, but we're 8 years into his NFL career. I'm just talking about, I don't remember him even being at the Heisman Awards, let alone in that conversation, but I could be wrong. Barry Sanders is still kind of the gold standard.
Who do you think should win the Heisman?
Travis Hunter. And now, if Ashton Genty goes nuts tonight and has 250 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, another one in the air, it's going to make things really hard for voters. But if Ashton Genty has, and the game's in Boise, and UNLV hasn't played there, even though they're in the same conference, UNLV hasn't played there in 8 years, since 2016. If he's just okay, and I say okay, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns is a good game. It's a great game for most running backs. He's going to have to be exceptional, like what we saw from Josh Jacobs last night in a loss. 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. I do think that the voting is going to be tight, relatively speaking, and I won't be surprised if Shedeur is third because of the season that he's had and the season the Buffs had. I think we'll see both Travis and Shedeur in New York next week for the Heisman, but I think Travis is going to win, and I think he'll have the most first-place votes and the most second-place votes as a result of it. But I don't know a scenario where anyone's putting a player above those guys, so that's what's going to make third to fifth. Because they invite, for people that don't know, the Heisman invites up to 5 athletes if they've got a certain percentage of votes. So there's some years where there's only been 3. I remember the year that it was probably Tim Tebow's last year, but it was Tim, Colt McCoy, and I can't remember who actually won whoever the third quarterback was that won it. But that's what you end up seeing is just a couple of guys. Some years it's 4, like when Peyton Manning lost to Charles Woodson. He was there, I want to say, with Ryan Leaf and Randy Moss. And so Travis Hunter is going to win the Heisman because I think enough voters realize how unique what he's doing is.
Very unique. Well, let's get into, I want to bring up, before we jump into the entire NFL slate, I want to talk about a tweet from our very own Nate Jackson, whom we miss dearly today, and we can't wait to have him back in the studio with us. But on December 3rd, Nate Jackson tweeted that he believes the Denver Broncos could win the Super Bowl this year. BK.
I saw that.
How do you feel about that statement? That's a big statement considering the way that the AFC is looking right now. I mean, you've got a lot of talents. You've got the Bills, 100%. They are going to the playoffs. You've got the Chiefs in the same spot. And then you've got just the AFC North itself is a very competitive. I mean, obviously the Bengals kind of fell off this season, but between the Steelers and the Ravens, there's a lot of talent in the AFC. So even getting out of the AFC, to me, feels like it's going to be difficult for this Broncos team. Now, that being said, having, in my opinion, the best defense in the league definitely puts you in a very good position. I love what our defense is doing right now. I feel confident that our defense could play very great football in the playoffs, but the AFC is kind of stacked. So do you think that there's a chance that the Broncos could win the Super Bowl?
As we hear everyone say, when you're in the tournament, you at least have a chance. But if we're ranking this, and I saw power rankings this week that had the Broncos 11th, but it had them behind all the teams that you just listed in the AFC. We saw the Lions allow the Bears to get into the game and have a chance to win it if better clock management on Thanksgiving. Last night, a fun back and forth game. A lot of people critical of Dan Campbell's decision to go for it on 4th down, which ultimately worked out in his favor. David Montgomery picks up the necessary yardage. They kick the game-winning field goal, and they're done. And so they've won their division. They're likely going to be the number 1 seed, although they do have the Eagles nipping at their heels. If we were to handicap it right now, though, and you might have teams ahead of the Broncos. I'm not sure, and I don't even know whose power rankings I saw, but they had the Broncos 11th, which felt about right. There's only 3 teams in the NFC right now that I think can represent that conference. I guess the Vikings, because they have players like Justin Jefferson, but I don't trust Sam Darnold. So there's 3 NFC teams. We saw 2 of them last night.
Mhm.
And it feels like there's still a bit of a gap between the Packers and then the other teams we were just talking about in the
Yep.
Lions and Eagles.
Yep.
If any team, no team from the West, shoot the Niners with your guy Debo, they can still win that division, which is crazy.
It is so crazy to think.
But there's one game. I mean, Seattle isn't going to go to the Super Bowl. Arizona's not going to the Super Bowl. As much as I like Matt Stafford and obviously a healthy Puka and Cooper Kupp and Kyron Williams, they're not going to the Super Bowl. There's just not enough there beyond that, as good as those 4 guys are. And the Niners aren't going to the Super Bowl this year because Christian's likely not coming back. Isn't that what his IG post was?
Jordan Mason,
Jordan
their
Mason,
backup, is
Jordan
out.
Mason's on IR. Kittle's banged up. Trent Williams is hurt. Debo's always banged up. He's just fighting through nagging stuff. Nick Bosa's been banged up, and Ayuk's on IR for the rest of the year. So they're just not going to the Super Bowl. So there's only 3 NFC teams. If any other NFC team were to get there, none of the teams in the South, even as fun as Tampa or Atlantic can be at times on offense, they're not going to the Super Bowl. So 3 teams in the NFC. But the gap between, I think it's 3 teams because the Steelers can definitely go to the Super Bowl, but it feels like let me ask you, does it feel like the Chiefs, Ravens, and Bills are still better? I get that the Steelers just beat the Ravens.
Yes, I would still consider
Eagles
those
just beat
3
the
teams
Ravens.
better. Yes.
They feel better. If you want to pick on the Ravens, we saw what the Ravens did to the Broncos. But the Broncos certainly, if they somehow were to leapfrog the Chargers, and I guess the Ravens, but just finish with a better record because we know the Ravens find ways to lose games. If they were to finish 5th and play the Texans in week 1, they absolutely can win a playoff game. But to think as it stands today with where this team is, while I appreciate the sentiment, I guess I left the Commanders out as a playoff team, but they're not going to the Super Bowl either. Rookie quarterbacks don't go to the Super Bowl. It's never happened. It's also not going to happen this year. Second-year quarterbacks have won it. Big Ben, who wasn't
So
great
he just answered the question. He does not think the Broncos are going to the Super Bowl.
I made it a 6-minute answer, but but I just laid out the case. Are the Broncos? Do you feel like the Broncos in the playoffs on the road against any of those teams? I guess there's a world where they could host the Ravens down. If they jump the Ravens and are 6th or 5th, and they both keep winning, then they could host the AFC Championship game. But otherwise, they're going on the road. They absolutely can go to Houston and win. The Texans, while they didn't maybe take as far a step back as I thought they might, they clearly aren't
still took a step
they
back.
aren't the same team they were a year ago. And I'm not exactly sure why. I understand some injuries at the wideout spot have slowed them down a little, and Joe Mixon's been banged up. In general, though, they're kind of the same team with the same coaches, same play caller. So I just don't see the Broncos today, especially with the way they kind of played the Browns. Like, it was fun. A healthy Riley Moss changes things. I don't see the Broncos as a Super Bowl winner today. I applaud Nate's enthusiasm, but I don't see it right now with where the Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, and I guess the Steelers are. But man, there's nothing I want more than the Monday night of Wild Card Weekend to see the Broncos in Pittsburgh to close out Super Wild Card Weekend and go to the Steel City, get a little revenge. Not against Russ, against the Steelers.
Because they handled us pretty good at the beginning of the season.
Certainly didn't let the offense do anything. Scored 6 points, no touchdowns.
I'm with you.
So I'll throw the question back at you. Do you think the Broncos? I understand they can win the Super Bowl, but do you think the Broncos can win the Super Bowl?
So, again, love Nate's enthusiasm about the fact that he believes the Broncos could win the Super Bowl this year. Do I think that they have what it takes to win the Super Bowl? Yes. Do I think that they will? No. Do I think that this is the type of team, based on the way that they have played and the way that they have continued to accelerate, fix mistakes, get better every game, that this is a team I would put money on next season? Yes, absolutely. If our defense stays intact and we get some of our defensive players back, you have to remember we had some injuries throughout this season. Our defense has found a way to not let it affect them and their performance. Vance Joseph has done an outstanding job. And we're watching Bo Nix do some really great things, not just for a rookie quarterback, but for a quarterback period in the NFL. And so I love the ceiling that I'm seeing with this Broncos team. I think they have what it takes to go to the Super Bowl this season and to win the Super Bowl this season. But given the nature of how competitive the AFC and the NFC is right now, it just feels like there are better teams. Again, when you look at football, if the Broncos did everything perfectly. Could they win the Super Bowl? Yes. But we've also seen a lot of inconsistencies with this team throughout the season, lots of ebbs and lots of flows. And so while we're on this momentum streak and while we're feeling really good about what they're doing, I'm not forgetting about how great other teams still are. There's a lot of really talented teams in the AFC right now. And so I think that they have what it takes. I'd be willing to sprinkle on the Broncos next season to start the season just to get some good odds there. But this season, I'm not sold on the whole Super Bowl thing. It's tough.
We got a text, not in our chat, although we invite everyone to participate there, and we'll do our best to read any comments that we can get to that make sense. But Nate Jackson,
he did say can, not will.
He is texting us watching the show. He says they can win the Super Bowl, not will. Yes, they can.
They can, for sure.
But a lot is going to have to happen for them to get there. I think one thing that's probably not going to ever be worked out this season is you look last night, Detroit has figured out how to use their 2 running backs.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly very well. Josh Jacobs is the bell cow. Almost every other team, even if they have multiple running backs, the Chiefs, it's when healthy, Pacheco's the guy, and they put guys around him. Pacheco just got back. The Steelers know how they're using their 2. Saquon Barkley's the man in Philly. The Broncos literally game to game changed the running back they use, including Marvin Mims as a wide receiver. And so you weren't on the show Wednesdays. You were traveling back. Nate wasn't on, but I had Romy being our pal from Channel 4 fill in, and Marvin Mims was with her the night before on what's normally their Monday show that they do at View House. They did it Tuesday. And he said Marvin is having to go spend time in the running back room. So he is leaving receiver meetings and spending time in the running back room. So he's going to special teams meetings, which special teams meetings don't overlap with position meetings. Either you go to special teams meetings or you don't. So if you're a quarterback, I'm pretty sure lineman like Mike McGlinchey don't have to go. He knows he's on field goal and that's it. You don't have to, they just do it earlier and you get that extra half-hour break. But Marvin Mims knows, then he's in receiver meetings and he's having to sneak over to running backs meetings and probably spend a little bit of time after the meeting window ends and guys are starting to take off in with the running back room, or at least with the running backs coach and or Joe Lombardi and Sean Payton and Bo Nix and all that, just to make sure he's caught up to speed, which got us into a conversation about Travis Hunter. And we can hold that for next week when we do the show Monday and talk to Nate about what Travis Hunter's future might look like meetings wise. But I'm saying all that to say their lack of continuity with their running backs, and when I say continuity, just understanding how they're going to use them, is going to make every game interesting, but also I think a challenge against playoff teams that know exactly how they are using their backs, especially because you're going to whittle it down, and the Texans are going to have Joe Mixon out there. The Bills are going to have Cook mostly, and then sprinkling Ray Davis. It's pretty straightforward if everyone's healthy, and right now everyone's healthy. So that bothers me. And then Riley Moss's knee, because I was told by somebody that I know that is very well informed, he's likely not back against the Colts and also might miss that Chargers game. So we may not see him until after Christmas on that weekend, 28th, 29th in Cincinnati. And that'll be fine because he'll be ready to go for the playoffs. You want to err on the side of caution there. Chris Abrams-Drain played that whole fourth quarter. Levi Wallace's days. Levi Wallace might be a healthy scratch come next week. I don't think they trust Amari Mathis enough to put him in that spot. But Chris Harris Jr. did bring up, why not just play the handful of times you're in base, the 30% of the time you're in base. Play Jaquan McMillan as your other corner until Riley's back. And I don't know if I hate that. I think the matchups kind of matter too. So, yes, they can win the Super Bowl, but I don't think they can win the Super Bowl. Nate?
They can, but I don't think they can. No, I understand what you're saying. I really quickly, before I go back into the NFC, because I have a question for you on that. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, and BK, I already know what he's going to say. I said this. It is time to have a very serious conversation about Nick Bonito and what he is doing for this Denver Broncos team. I was at the Monday Night Football game, BK, and wow. I mean, there is like, not only are we watching him again, this was a defense that kind of had some injuries. There was maybe some concern of what this defense is going to look like. He has been exceptional, and I would love to know from you, BK, the numbers, how his numbers compare. I already know that's what BK is doing on his laptop right as we speak, so I know that that's coming. But it is time to have a serious conversation about how legitimately talented and important Nick Bonito is to this Denver Broncos team. I have been so pleased with what we've seen from him. I think he's gotten stronger every single game we've seen him play. But I mean, BK, like defensive player of the year type of performances from this guy, in my opinion. He looks incredible.
He really does. And it's a credit to him that his game has evolved. And admittedly, I didn't watch every OU game that he played in. We knew that he could rush a passer. The knock on him early was, how does he set the edge in the run game, and how much of a participant is he in the run game? Most of your elite pass rushers aren't always great in the run game, but they're still active. Von Miller's probably the best example, and that's who you want to compare people that are built like him. You want to compare them to Von anyway. But we saw Von year after year get better against the run. I think DeMarcus Ware helped with that some, and just Von understanding the NFL. And I think that's what's happening with Nick Bonito, is that he's learning how to play the run game, to identify where the ball's going. And you don't want your edge rushers dropping back into coverage. Now, you'll take that more than our pal Shelby Harris dropping back into coverage. Shelby won't tell you he's an athlete, and we know he can get his hands on the football. But when I saw Shelby in coverage the other day, I was like, well, they can't dial that up too much because it's just not going to go great. Nick Bonito, the time he did drop into coverage, he covered not one but two tight ends and a back, picks the ball off and goes 71 yards to the house for one of the longest touchdowns of the weekend. And so what we're seeing is a guy completing his game, and now the sky's really the limit, because once you've unlocked that ability to stay on the field all three downs, or certainly in base downs, I get that you're going to rotate through, but going to play 80 to 90% of the snaps.
Yep.
And you got a guy who's so stout in Jonathan Cooper on the other side. This is a younger version of what Von and DeMarcus Ware, when healthy, were, or what Von and Bradley Chubb, when healthy, were. And I get Bradley was even younger than Von. But by the time Von and DeMarcus really got going, Von's into year 5 or 6. Well, let's see, I guess year 4. But Bonito's in year 3, Coop's in year 4. And they complement each other really well. They're both nonstop. They're both elite athletes, but you can see that Bonito's athleticism is even crazier. And it's a credit to George Payton that he identified that. So I pulled this up the other day with Romy and I. I didn't realize this. Nick Bosa is making $34 million a year. But that's kind of, I don't want to say it's the outlier, but it's the exception, because then the rest, Josh Hines Allen, not to be confused with Josh Allen, he added another name in there to differentiate himself from the quarterback. But with the Jags, he's been a multiple-time Pro Bowler. He's making 28-2. Brian Burns, with his new deal with the Giants, he's making 28-2. TJ Watt, he's making 28 and change. Myles Garrett, 25. But Myles Garrett and TJ Watt are, I don't think they're lobbying. Myles kind of is, for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Nick Bonito and Pat Surtain are at worst 3rd and 4th. And that may end up meaning they're splitting votes. But the idea that we're talking about a guy who's got now 11 sacks, which is second most in the league, but one more than Myles Garrett, and he's got a pick 6 to go with it, and has been better in the run game. He is in that Defensive Player of the Year conversation. And he's also, a year from now, perhaps depending on where it shakes out, going to have a chance to set, if his agents are good enough and the market continues to shift, I guess there's a world where he's going to make more than Nick Bosa. But at the very least, let's say he's going to make $28 million, $29 million a year, a year from now, and that could be as early as August. They're not going to do the deal. They don't need to do the deal until the season ends because of the way the salary cap works. But Nick Bonito is putting himself in the conversation of being one of the highest paid players in the NFL, and certainly at his position, which is, after quarterback, some would argue the second most valuable position in football is edge rusher.
Yep. And he is playing exceptional. Speaking of money, holiday season, very expensive holiday season. Our friends over at Trusted American Mortgage can help you out. It would be pretty great to get through the holidays without having to make a mortgage payment, BK.
I don't ever want to make a mortgage payment again.
Right. I don't want to either. So if you guys head to trustedamerican.com or you scan the QR code that we have got on the screen for you, you can see how much money that they can save you today. They're actually willing to cover the cost of appraisal up to $650. And you may not have to make any payments until February. So go check them out, trustedamerican.com, and or scan that handy dandy QR code in the top corner there. We're making it easy for you because we love convenience these days. So just give that a quick scan or head to trustedamerican.com. Our friends over at Trusted American Mortgage want to help you save money this season.
Again, if you're listening, there's not a QR code on your device.
But trustedamerican.com.
Trustedamerican.com.
And they'll help you out.
Very easy. We know how expensive the holiday season can be and how you're just going to spend a little more money than you were, no matter what, even though we talked about this yesterday, that you still can spend a lot of money all the time once you're an adult and have your own house.
All the
buying
time.
stuff. You don't live with your parents. You don't.
Have you done Christmas shopping so far? I have not bought a single gift this season.
I have. A couple of things came courtesy of my wife on Cyber Monday, sending me things. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just buy it. She's like, okay, buy this. And then because she's not watching this and won't ever hear about it, and even my friends that watch this likely won't tell her, I upgraded her ski pass to a full,
I love it.
Epic pass, so she has no restrictions. So those are the only things I've bought. She's bought some stuff for the kids, including right now we were chatting just a little earlier, and she was traveling for work, but had time to swing by a store. And so she was like, hey, I'm getting these. She got some Hanukkah pajamas to go with the Christmas, lots of Christmas jammies. She got a ballerina blanket and ballerina doll for our little girl. But me personally, I'm kind of window shopping. I'm not the guy that waits like Mark Schlereth, who's obviously, well known here in town as a great football player, great analyst, great on the radio. We worked together for a while, and Sting's favorite thing is to say he doesn't even go shopping until Christmas Eve. And I think he's exaggerating a little.
I was going to say that sounds like torture.
But that he goes to the hospital.
Because the mall that time of year makes me want to, pull my hair out. I hate it.
It certainly can be a lot, although especially on Christmas Eve, because people are doing a better job of buying online just in general, or maybe planning ahead when they see deals, because Cyber Monday deals and Black Friday deals extend. But Eric Decker was at the mall on Christmas Eve one year, and I bump into him at the Apple store. He's like, hey, Brandon, what are you doing here? I go, it's Christmas Eve.
I'm shopping.
I'm shopping. Same thing you're doing.
Last second
Eric.
shopping.
Same thing you're doing. I was doing some last second shopping. We can probably help people win some money, though, or at least try.
I think, yes, we absolutely can. And before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, because you were talking about the run game and just how important that is. And in the NFC, we saw the Lions just last night really establishing their two-man run game over there. They pretty much are firing off on all cylinders right now, the Detroit Lions. But I want to ask you, because I do feel like it's going to maybe start cutting it a little close between these two teams right now in the NFC. Would you take one healthy Saquon Barkley, or would you take Gibbs and Montgomery? Because Saquon right now...
Wait, are you ensuring that Saquon's healthy through the playoffs? So I can have all of them through the playoffs?
They're all healthy. Do you think Saquon himself is enough to compete against the duo in Gibbs and Montgomery?
Yes. So, Saquon has a real chance to win the MVP. If Josh Allen stumbles or doesn't look great, they're playing the Lions here coming up in the next week or two.
Mm-hmm.
If Josh Allen just stumbles down the stretch, it feels like currently it's Josh Allen's award to lose. But I have two separate tickets because my buddy that we like to do stuff together on FanDuel, your favorite betting app.
Mm-hmm.
We have a $10 bet and a $16 bet at 60-1 from a couple weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
10 and 16 equal 26. That's Saquon's number. As somebody who grew up in Dallas, I don't have any love for the Eagles, although I know people with that organization that I've liked. But Saquon's been awesome, jumping over people backwards. For this run this year, it obviously makes more sense to have two guys long-term, especially because Gibbs is younger. But right now, the way Saquon's playing, I want Saquon Barkley this year as much production as you can get from both those guys together, and they spell each other.
Mm-hmm.
We know that a running back, very rarely you're having 9 to 11 play drives. So he gets plenty of time to catch a breather, or they'll bring in Kenneth Gainwell for 2 plays. I think Saquon is so dynamic right now that I'm going Saquon. So I'll throw the question back to you. Saquon or the Montgomery Gibbs duo?
Saquon for sure. And honestly, you talk about the MVP race that is happening right now. I do agree with you that it is Josh Allen's award to lose at this point. But I'm looking at the slate. I'm looking at the bets from a betting angle. I'm looking at the fact that the Eagles are taking on the Panthers this weekend. They are a 13.5-point favorite. And right now, the Panthers are giving up the most yards this season to opposing running backs. And right now, per game on average, 137.7 off of 28.2 rush attempts. And so to me, this is a great position for Saquon Barkley as he enters a game against a team that does not know how to defend the run, for him to have an absolute field day. So I would not be surprised if that MVP race gets a little bit closer in this week, because I think Saquon has the ability to go ballistic against the Panthers.
If he goes nuts, I may shoot you a note on Sunday and ask you to reach out to your friends at FanDuel to see if they'll increase the buyout option, which they're giving us a cash out option now.
Yeah.
But it's still nowhere near, getting it 60-1 just a few weeks ago when it's now.
Unfortunately, I do not have that much pull. It's so funny because when
can't
people
just call up Steve FanDuel or whoever FanDuel.
Whenever I tell people I work for FanDuel, their first response is like, "Oh, what's the script tonight?" I'm like, you think if I knew the script, I wouldn't work another day in my life because I'd be filthy rich. I don't know diddly squat. I represent FanDuel as a content creator, but there is no world in which I am getting the unleaked script that nobody else has access to, and I know exactly how the game is going to play out. If that's the case, you guys, I would be a millionaire, and I probably wouldn't be sitting at the Gorilla Sports desk right now. I'd probably be in Bora Bora with my feet up on a table, sipping on a pina colada. My days would look a little different if I knew the script to every NFL game and could bet accordingly.
That's the definition of vacation for you, is you want your feet on the table?
Yeah, just like kicked up. Yeah, on the table.
Kicked up's different, but like on the table, like.
Yeah, on the table.
Eat there, so you want to be sitting there in a chair, you don't give a damn.
I have clean feet.
Okay. What does they have sand on them?
Then I'll wash them off.
All right.
That is the one thing I hate about a beach vacation. The sand follows you. Have you guys ever had that? Okay, this is the most random segue on this off-field show, but have you ever gone on a beach vacation and then you come home and weeks later you bite down and you bite on a grain of sand in your mouth? I'm talking weeks later. I'm talking you haven't been to the beach in like now a good week and a half, 2 weeks, and randomly you're sitting there and you bite down and you're like, was that sand? I have had that happen more than once, and I really pray that I am not the only person that has dealt with that, because if so, now I've got to do a deep dive as to why I have sand in my teeth when I get home.
I feel like that's kind of the bigger question is why do you like? I understand that's going to be in your luggage, and then
I don't know how it happens.
There's definitely been times where I've grabbed luggage, and there'll still be some grains of sand. Is that right? There'll be some sand in there. I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we didn't get all the sand up from that time we went to Mexico.
But yeah, in your teeth is weird. But it does happen to me.
I guess I'm trying to figure out how it gets from your clothes into your teeth, unless you're bringing back food items.
No, never am. I don't understand it, and I really, really hope somebody gets in the comments and is like, Liv, it's happened to me, because I don't want to be the only weirdo.
You're probably not the only person that's happened to. I'm still trying to figure out how you're chewing on sand.
I don't understand either.
I do want to. Before we get to the MVP odds, and I know we're going to go through a couple games or things we like this weekend. The idea of the NFL script is so frustrating. Although I do appreciate when, like Natalie Bowles, Garrett Bowles' wife, especially when the noise was louder about the script, she's like, yeah, my husband was so pissed when he got the script that he was going to tear his leg in week 5 and miss the rest of the season.
Kind of funny.
Yeah, or Christian McCaffrey, like, the idea that the game is scripted when so many things have to happen is insane. If you want to get into conspiracy theories about the way the refs call games or the way...
watch a Chiefs game and then you'll know, yeah.
And it's almost getting to the point where, like last night when the ref gets knocked down, like, oh, a Chiefs player got hurt in the Lions-Packers game. You see that all over social media. That's at least fun. And I understand, because we could probably go to every good team's games, including last night where the Lions won. And in front of everybody in the world, Amon-Ra St. Brown knocks Xavier McKinney's helmet off. And that's illegal hands to the face in every league in America, including flag football leagues that don't even have helmets. But it wasn't called. And I'm sure we can do that with the Lions. We can do it probably with the Eagles. We can go through these good teams' games. The ball just tends to bounce your way when you're a good team. calls get missed.
That's very true.
And so,
and that's what we're seeing with the Chiefs a lot, for sure.
Part of it is that they're a good team and they're in position all the time where their games matter. It doesn't matter for the Jags right now. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence getting his head taken off, that's a different deal. But the idea that the NFL scripted is so insane to me. And if people really believe that, it's like, okay, we're probably having different conversations almost all the time anyway. So I don't need to be talking to you.
Meaning you're a lost cause in his brain.
Josh Allen is minus 250, which means if you put up $250 right now, that's how you win 100. So he's that much of a favorite. Basically, $600 more than Saquon Barkley, 650 technically, because Saquon's second though at plus 400. When I got him at plus 60 or plus 6,000 just a few weeks ago, that was really good value. But Saquon has jumped to number 2. There's still a good gap. Lamar, then a pretty sizable gap between Saquon and Lamar after Saquon goes in, plays really well against Baltimore and beats Baltimore. So he's 9-1. Jared Goff 12-1. Mahomes still 16-1 because his team keeps winning. And then Justin Herbert, now your best odds if you wanted to go long shot odds at 75-1. But Justin Herbert's not winning the MVP. So
I mean, listen, I don't ever want to talk about this and put it out into the universe because one of my biggest icks. Oh, if you really want to piss me off, one of my biggest icks is somebody, because it happened last night. I had a beautiful Nuggets parlay. And if any person on this planet looks at me and says, with time still left in the game, and looks at me and says, oh, that's definitely going to hit, I might swing on you. I actually might swing on you. That makes me so mad because now you're a bet musher. And I am a little bit of a, like, I'm not a superstitious person, but there is an aspect.
You're a little stitious.
I'm a little stitious, not superstitious. Yeah. So I'm a little stitious about certain things. Okay. Mushing my bets is one of them, but I don't like to speak like this because I don't want to be the person that's like, oh, knock on wood. Oh crap. He's actually injured. There is a lot that can happen in the last 5 weeks of regular season football. If Josh Allen were to get hurt right now, just because he's minus 250 to win the MVP award right now does not mean a whole lot while there are still 5 weeks of football. Now, do I foresee
Carson
him?
Wentz about that. He was going to win the MVP and he gets his knee blown out.
Right. So is there a world where if Josh Allen stays healthy, do I think that the MVP award is his if he continues to play the way he's been playing? I do. However, like I said, Saquon Barkley in a really great position this weekend facing the Carolina Panthers to go ballistic. And if Josh Allen, because he does play a game that can be dangerous and physically dangerous. I mean, we saw him with a lateral he had a passing and receiving touchdown in the same play. Like, he's that type of guy. So he does play a little bit more of a physical game. There's some risks involved there. There is a world where he could get injured in these last 5 weeks of play. And in which case, Saquon Barkley to me is the MVP. He's the MVP winner. Now, there's also a world where Lamar Jackson fires it up a little bit more in the last 5 weeks. So the MVP race to me is a very unique one because really it's not over till it's over. Now, that being said, Josh Allen having an incredible season, and I don't foresee him regressing from now until the end of the year, but you just never know. So if you're a betting person out there and you're like, I kind of want some better value, Josh Allen at minus 250 is not really giving me a whole lot, I'm willing to sprinkle on Saquon Barkley. I mean, if let's I don't even know what the Eagles' remaining schedule looks like, but like I said, an absolute field day can be had against this Carolina Panthers team. Then, unfortunately, they do see the Steelers, a defense that I think could maybe give him some troubles.
But if he has a big game against the Steelers, you say, oh, look at what he just did against the Steelers. 150 yards and
rivalry against the Cowboys on the 29th of December. And then after that, the Giants. So and the Commanders on the 22nd. So we know Commanders-Eagles games, for whatever reason, are always way too close. Even when the Eagles have been a far more superior team than the Commanders, they always seem to be very competitive. Then you've got the rivalry against the Cowboys. Then you've got the Giants, who I think you can have a pretty solid game against if you're Saquon Barkley.
Revenge. Yet another revenge game. That game I want to say is in New York too, right? Is that game in New York or that game is in Philly? So he's already had the game in New York.
They have the remainder of their games are all home games except for the Commanders game on the 22nd of December.
And that's obviously an easy trip. There'll be lots of Eagles fans there, although we know the Commanders are rejuvenated. The Bills, on the other hand, they're at the Rams this weekend, so they're flying all the way across the country. Odds are they're flying today. I haven't even checked, but they're probably on a plane today to try to adjust to West Coast time. Then they go to Detroit next week, and that's going to be obviously a big game a week from Sunday. It's in that late window, so it's going to be opposite of the Broncos Colts. You're going to have to go multiple screens if you're not at the game, or just kind of keep track of it on your phone. Then they get 2 at the Patriots, home to New England, home to the Jets, then at the Patriots. We know the Patriots are just playing for pride at this point. They have their quarterback, so their draft position doesn't matter to the level other teams might. And I understand that's not the way people play. Gerard Mayo's in year 1. He's not worried about losing his job. So the Patriots, who certainly have the Bills number forever in the Tom Brady world, and certainly have not in a post-Tom Brady era. That's why the Bills have run that division, even with the Dolphins trending up in recent years when Tua has been healthy. If he stumbles in some of those games, then Saquon has a chance to close the gap. At the same time, if the Chiefs lose any of their remaining games, the Bills leapfrog them. And I think winning the conference, which the Eagles can also do. And I don't know the tiebreaker with the Eagles and Lions. I guess we've got to figure that out. But if the Bills go to Detroit and beat the Lions, and the Eagles win out, the Eagles may be able to jump the Lions. I guess I need to look through those scenarios. But that strengthens, at the very least, if the Eagles can't, even with a Lions loss to the Bills, can't leapfrog them to win the conference,
right,
and be the 1 seed with the bye, but the Bills can, and they supplant the Chiefs, and they beat the Chiefs obviously head to head. I get the game was in Buffalo, but they won that game this year. If the Bills win the conference as the number 1 seed, and it could come down to the Broncos and Chiefs on that final. The Chiefs may win out until that final game on the 9th or 7th or whatever day that what's the final day of the season? 5th?
Oh, mark my effing words. Hear me when I say this Denver Broncos team has tasted blood with this Chiefs team, okay? The Chiefs nearly lost to the Carolina Panthers. This is a beatable team. I know their record shows they're one of the best teams in the league. I'm still not buying it. I'm really not. I think they're they're a great football team, yes, but I am not bought into this Chiefs team being this unstoppable force, because I've seen a lot of close games with this Chiefs team that show me otherwise. This Broncos team, mark my words, they tasted blood. They are pissed at the way that Chiefs game ended. I'm still pissed about the way that Chiefs game ended. And every week since that game, we have watched this Broncos team get better and better and better. The Broncos will beat the Chiefs to close their season. And honestly, I think right now, as much as I love this Bengals team, and the Bengals are the most talented losers in the NFL, it doesn't make any effing sense to me. They're playing great football, but it's not translating on offense. I think that the Broncos are in a really great position to potentially win out the remainder of their season, the remainder of their schedule. Now, I will tell you, I think the game that makes me the most nervous is the game that got flexed to a Thursday night matchup, and it's against the Chargers. The Chargers right now, to me, have a lot working in their favor. They're in our division. I think that's going to be a really great game, but we know it's hard to beat the same team twice, and the Broncos have fallen short to both the Chargers and the Chiefs, 2 teams that are left on their schedule. But between the Colts, I'm hoping this bye week works in their favor and they can continue to build off of what we've seen so far. But the Colts, the Chargers, the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Broncos are in a great position to win out the rest of their season. Do they have to do a lot of things right? Yes, but I feel confident that they can win out.
So the Chiefs have the hardest schedule. You know, we went through the Eagles, we went through the Bills. We know what the Broncos schedule is. The Chiefs host the Chargers this week on Sunday Night Football. So that's going to be the Chargers. The one thing we know is defense travels, and they've got the best scoring defense in football.
Yep.
Justin Herbert has shown that he can make enough plays. That's why he's 6th in MVP odds right now. So they could lose this week. Then they go to Cleveland. And say what you want about the Browns. They're fun. They're talented on both sides of the ball. We saw it firsthand. And Jameis is going to give you a chance. Now, he's going to give the Chiefs a chance too. But Jameis is going to make enough throws and make enough plays and have his team believing. You heard, if you watched We're the Harrises this week, you heard Shelby echo the sentiments that so many other of his teammates have about the belief that Jameis is instilling in his teammates. And it's a really fascinating dynamic with Deshaun Watson and his guaranteed contract and everything going on there with that or not going on. That Jameis just came in, bided his time. He hasn't started in 4 or 5 years, like been a down and down out starter. Didn't win the job in New Orleans necessarily. They brought in Derek Carr, and then he hits the market. Thought maybe would Sean Payton bring him here to back up, or compete, not knowing exactly what their quarterback situation would be during free agency. And Jameis is going to keep the Browns in it. So you got the Chargers this week in KC, at Cleveland, Texans, and I understand the Texans, like we said earlier, taking a step back. Texans still have enough talent to go in and beat the Chiefs. Absolutely. Nico Collins healthy, Joe Mixon, obviously CJ Stroud, solid defense. Then they go to Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. And for people that aren't keeping track, the Chiefs are going to play on 6 of the 7 days of the week this year. The only day they're not playing the entire season is Tuesday, because they're playing Saturday leading up to it. That Texans game is a Saturday. Then Wednesday, Christmas Day against the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And then they close out here with the Browns. So that's definitely the toughest schedule. I mean, you've got 4 playoff teams and the Browns, who are, for as talented as the Bengals are on offense, the Browns have weapons on offense and perhaps the reigning defensive player of the year. But maybe he's about to be a 2-time consecutive defensive player of the year in Myles Garrett. So that's not a guarantee, knowing that the Chiefs can stumble. So before we get out
the Chiefs
here,
are beatable.
We're gonna talk some hoops here coming up with Off Court. But do you have anything you love, either a game this weekend? Because I do think Chargers Chiefs Sunday night will be a fun way to cap NFL Sunday that doesn't really matter for Broncos fans that aren't necessarily watching the for any reason other than fantasy playoffs and gambling. Are there any plays you like or any games? Like Browns are playing the Steelers again this week.
Yeah.
Seahawks Cardinals is a fun one. We mentioned Bills Rams.
Yep.
Bengals Cowboys with the Simpsons on Monday. Simpsons
oh my
broadcast.
gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have a ton of matchups that intrigue me. Obviously, when the Broncos don't play, I think my brain sort of shuts off a little bit. I will tell you, I don't believe that a coach of the caliber and intelligence of Kyle Shanahan is thinking in any shape or form about tanking the season. He is way too good of a coach. He cares way too much about this game, and he's way too smart of a coach to make that call with this many games left. So this, to me, is a great week for the 49ers to show a little bit of promise, especially given the nature of how tight the NFC West is right now. I mean, it really could go any direction. All 4 of those teams have been very close, and I know the 49ers have struggled, but taking on the Chicago Bears, to me, puts them in a really great spot to look for a bounce back. So if I had to pick a bet this week, I'm probably laying the points with the 49ers, despite how rough they've looked. You know, they played in that snow game against the Bills. The Bills absolutely dominated. I got a chance to talk with Deebo Samuel a little bit about how that game felt. I think this 49ers team knows as well as any other football fan watching that they have talent. Their roster is stacked. They have a great coach in Kyle Shanahan. I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think the word tank is even in the 49ers vocabulary. So to me, if I've got one pick this weekend, it's going with laying the points with the 49ers against a very struggling Bears team. So the 49ers can prove they've still got it. They've got a talented roster. And like I said, the NFC West is anybody's right now. And so I think there's got to still be a little bit of fight in that locker room of, hey, despite the struggles we've had this season, there's still a chance here. So I don't think tanking is in their vocabulary. I think they're going to keep pushing forward. I'm laying the points with the 49ers.
I like the Browns plus 6.5 in Pittsburgh.
I don't hate that at all.
We obviously saw them up close. They didn't cover, but they played well in spots. We know how much Myles Garrett takes pride in being the best defensive player, calling out TJ Watt. It's a rematch from the snow game from just a couple of weeks ago. So the Steelers obviously are going to have something to say about it. I just watched the first episode of AFC North Hard Knocks last night after the football game. I was going to watch the Madden documentary and then remembered, or I saw something on Twitter about Hard Knocks. So I watched that, and it's really fun with all 4 teams in the division participating in it, and seeing Mike Tomlin and seeing Jameis, and instead of just focusing on one team, it's a cool way to redo Hard Knocks a little bit. So credit to them. But so that's the early game that I'm most excited about. And then in that late window, I think Seahawks Cardinals, even though the Cardinals are a favorite, Seahawks have been better on the road than they have been at home this year.
Yep.
So I'll be keeping an eye on that. And then as well as Bills Rams and that.
And again, NFC West, it's a very competitive one. Yeah. So that's a game that matters for sure.
And I picked the Seahawks to cover in that. And then I will certainly tune into Chargers Chiefs as well. And then Bengals Cowboys. I'm still a glutton for punishment as a kid who grew up in Dallas watching the Cowboys.
I just want to keep betting on the Bengals, but every time I do, I'm like,
well, and the Cowboys are 5.5-point dogs. I get it's Cooper Rush, it's not Dak Prescott, but the Cowboys have plenty of talent. We saw it on
I wouldn't mind taking the underdog in that one to cover.
Yeah, and that over-under is 49.5. That might be fun.
Yeah.
That's a fun game, not just because of the Simpsons thing, but to load up a same-game parlay
Totally.
and hit up CeeDee Lamb and you're getting Ferguson back. Rico Dowdle's clearly become the number one guy for now until they can upgrade that spot. Cooper Rush to hit his over, which is going to be like 200 yards.
Yeah.
And then Joe Burrow's going nuts. Joe Burrow has 30 touchdowns against 5 picks. Jamar Chase to hit his overs, even with Cowboys defense being better and Micah Parsons being back healthy.
Yep.
So I think that it's a fun way to end the weekend. And if you're looking for something to make it more gimmicky, watch the Simpsons version of it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, this has been another episode of Off Field Guerrilla Sports. I'm Liv Moods. This is BK, and this off-field episode has been presented by Trusted American Mortgage. Head to trustedamerican.com or scan the QR code right here on the screen to see how they can help you save some money during this expensive holiday season. Don't go anywhere, though. We will be live with Off Court in just a few to break down last night's Nuggets games as well as preview the Nuggets games that we've got coming up this weekend. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you soon. I'm Liv Moods. That's BK. And we will see you in just a minute. Bye.